Lanz's desire to found a chivalrous order evolved directly from his racist, elitist gnosis. Although his theology was formally complete by 1905, he had not yet identified its historical agents beyond the Israelites and the early Christians. In the course of the Ostara series, this rudimentary definition was extended to include eminent medieval saints, monastic founders, and mystics. These individual agents of the gnosis were supplemented by the reformed monastic orders and the associated military orders of the Crusades. This choice reflects personal preferences. His adoption of chivalrous agents for the gnosis tradition was fostered by a complex of factors involving his own psychological disposition and the neo-romantic climate of Austrian and German culture at the turn of the century. That's from the Order of the New Templars. In Nicholas Goodrick Clark's book, The Occult Roots of Nazism, and that's a Taurus Park paperback. Very good book. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Let's talk about the Supreme Court nomination by Barry Soetoro. Kagan is abhorrent in a lot of ways for the Supreme Court. So let's just outline a couple of things right now. First of all, she is antithetical to several portions of the Constitution, deeming that free speech that is negative or in a way that is contrary to what the government supports, in her view, it would be fine if that speech just disappeared. She doesn't outright say it should be outlawed, but to express a willingness or a desire for certain forms of free speech to just disappear would naturally cause one to believe that should a case come before her that has implications in that realm, that she might likely vote in a manner that would cause that type of free speech to disappear. She's no friend of the Second Amendment either, and she is also a fan of indefinite detention. So there you have three things right there which make her totally anathema to me, and as far as I'm concerned, should completely disqualify from her from a position that would put her in charge of interpreting case law in light of the fucking Constitution. Because she basically is saying that the Constitution is not an immutable document, that it can be molded and shaped depending on the circumstances. You cannot look at the Constitution as being a set of rights and, shall we say, liberties that are granted by the Constitution. Instead, it is a piece of paper which merely acknowledges the rights and liberties that people have, and the fact that they cannot fucking be infringed by anybody. And as far as speech being a precursor to other activities, which is sort of the gist of what she wants to get at, saying that, racially charged commentary maybe should not be covered by free speech in the First Amendment. That's specifically the kind of speech which should be protected. It's the speech that is troublesome, that is bothersome. That is the speech that must be protected by the First Amendment. It's the speech that you do not want to hear. It's the speech that you would like to punch the guy in his fucking face for saying it. That's the speech that needs protected. Not the swill that comes out of every person who has no idea about the gravity of life that we live in today. Not the kind of platitudes, glad-handing, and attaboys that you get from a system of complacent morons. That speech requires no protection because it offends nobody. It does nothing. It accomplishes nothing. And as far as the Second Amendment goes, it has been said by many people, and I'm one to agree, that the Second Amendment was not put in place to make sure that people had arms in case we were invaded by a foreign power and militias could be formed. Although that is a part of it, the real reason why people should be allowed to keep and bear arms, and that should not be infringed, is so a tyrannical government cannot just swoop down one day and fucking take everything over and turn it into a 1984 Orwellian society where everybody is the fucking same. And you have no rights except what are given to you by the powers that be, not what are inherently yours and merely recognized in a piece of paper as being so. Another issue with Kagan is a rather, I must say, small, practically insignificant payment that she received from Goldman Sachs in the amount of $10,000. Now, as far as I've been able to tell so far, I can't tell whether that was a one-time thing, whether it was a yearly stipend for some project she was involved in. The fact of the matter remains. You already have so many people from Goldman Sachs in this government. Who is advising Barry Soetoro on who he should pick for the fucking Supreme Court? Is it perhaps, maybe, Goldman Sachs? Who may be facing fraud investigations on top of civil charges. Is this really the move of a wise leader? Please ask yourself that question. Even the hint of involvement in Goldman Sachs by anybody that he brings forth for any fucking position, I don't care what it is, should be enough to disqualify them immediately. Is it just me? Who's advising Barry Soetoro? Who is advising him on these choices? Maybe he's just getting his marching orders, just the way a puppet should be given them. And he just throws the name in the ring without a care in the world, because that's what his masters told him to do. Way to go, Barry Soetoro. Now let's talk about indefinite detention and the Enemy Belligerent Act, brought to us by two of our favorite people in the entire world, Joseph Lieberman and John Manchurian candidate McCain. Both of which I would dearly love to see out of office, because both of which are well known for promoting legislation which makes me want to puke my entire fucking guts out. I can't stand either of them. The Enemy Belligerent Act and taking away people's citizenship. That is only a means by which they can then say, well, these people have no recourse to anything. So whatever we do to them is outside the bounds of all law, all morality, and they cannot be touched by anything. It's like the man without a country. Do you understand? It is self-justification for treating these people, whoever they deem should be treated so, to whatever they deem is appropriate. And there is absolutely no recourse whatsoever to get out of that system. It is a really, really, really horrendous thing to consider. And I hope everybody's going to jump on board to say, fuck no, we're not going to stand for this. Call your senators, call your congressmen, and tell them implicitly every single day, write them letters and tell them that both of these are so abhorrent to your idea of what truth and justice is in this country, and so antithetical to the Constitution that it makes you sick that anybody would even think of doing such a thing. And last but not least, the Senate has unveiled, thanks to Senator Kerry, another fucking asshole, the cap and trade, the Senate version. I'm not even going to talk about climate change, okay? For or against. Okay, it doesn't matter. I've already stated my position before. What does this do to save the planet from, burning up? The only thing cap and trade does is it gives a certain allotment of carbon credits to various corporations, allows them to trade and sell them, taxes everything that we fucking use so that everything that we buy, which requires energy to fucking produce it, will cost us more. Okay? That's bottom line. Big corporations are given these credits, they trade in them. What is going to be the effect on their bottom line? And let us not forget, some of the biggest proponents of this cap and trade fucking scam are people who are heavily invested in it, like Al Gore. If that's not a conflict of interest, I know he's not in a public office right now, but he's a huge champion for this idea because he stands to make billions of dollars. Who else is going to make billions of dollars? The Rothschilds. Do you think the Rothschilds need more fucking money? They already own half the fucking world, maybe even more than that. Do they really need more? The point is, cap and trade is a horrid fucking solution. Even if you believe in man-made global warming or man-made climate change or whatever the term you want to call it. Even if you believe it. Cap and trade is a horrendous system that is designed to impoverish people. And it is right in line with the austerity program that is being pushed by the EU, by the United States, by the World Bank, and by the IMF. And it's going to come to every industrialized nation eventually. And cap and trade is part of that system. You better believe it. You better believe it. And all it's going to do is ensure that the poor stay fucking poor or get poorer, and the fucking rich get fucking richer from our money. And just one final note. You do realize, of course, that the $1 trillion that the EU is pumping into their system is being contributed to by the United States via the Federal Reserve, don't you? So, for all of those people who believe in fiscal responsibility here in the United States, namely Tea Party folks, maybe they ought to sit back and scratch your heads and say, hey, wait a minute. What the fuck are we paying for the EU for? Maybe some people just don't get the ramifications of what's going on. Stay active, people. We have a lot of fucking work to do. Thank you. Good night.